I don't understand why the expectations should be so different this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers just because they brought in a quarterback who had one average season and, quite frankly, one outright terrible season in Denver.
Well, I mean, Brad, I think there's a lot that's going on here. And I know we kind of stand on both sides of this. I'm really think we're going to get a motivated Russ to come back. I think a lot of what they did was they fortified the offensive line. They got Fontenot in the first round. Then they doubled down in the second round, got Zach Frazier. Then they also didn't double down in the third round and got Roman Wilson. And one thing we do know about Pittsburgh Steelers, they know how to draft some weapons in terms of those, especially specifically those wide receivers.
Yeah, and look, I think centering it around the quarterback, I think, is the main point here. But you're right. This Steelers team always drafts well. They always add pieces, and I think the roster is still pretty good. But when I look at it just from a simple math standpoint, the Denver Broncos scored 21 points per game last year. The Pittsburgh Steelers in this horrible offense scored 18 points per game last year. So the difference between what Russell Wilson and that offense was putting up and what Pittsburgh was doing is a field goal. So the excitement and the buzz around Russell coming to Pittsburgh, I think, is just getting too much hype here. Now, look, I think Wilson can play okay. And I think he's an upgrade because that quarterback room was terrible. So I don't want to make it seem like there's nothing to be excited about, but the defense is really the story in Pittsburgh. And I think it's going to be good. And it usually is good in Pittsburgh, right? And you got TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward is slowing down a bit, but he's still there. Alex Highsmith, underrated pass rusher. Joey Porter Jr., the corner, came in as a rookie last year. He was outstanding. The Steelers had one of the, quite frankly, one of the best pass rushing units in the NFL last season. One of the best third down defenses last season. They signed Patrick Queen. I think that's a nice move this offseason. This defense is going to give them a chance to be competitive. I think that's the real story in Pittsburgh. But here's the thing. Last time I checked, they still play in the AFC. Last time I checked, they still play in the AFC North. And at best, I think they're the third best team in this division. So I don't understand the hype around this team. I think the Steelers are a wild card playoff contender at best. Now, Mike Tomlin is still the coach, so it's hard to think that they're going to be bad. But I do have a hard time taking them seriously as a team that could take down the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, the Bengals. I just think there's no way a team like that can hang around with these other contenders. And so when you look at this franchise, the Pittsburgh Steelers don't hang AFC North championship banners. They don't celebrate playoff appearances. This is a franchise that expects to be a contender. This is a franchise that expects to be winning Super Bowls, and I still think they're a long ways off from that. And even with these upgrades and a nice draft, I don't think they're contenders, and I'm not even sure they make the playoffs.
Okay. So a few things. One thing you just brought to my attention was, let's just say if it was a difference of 3 points. If it was a difference of 3 points and Russ was the quarterback last year, they're a 12-5 team instead of a 10-7 team. If you just add, it was 2 games that they had, one against Cleveland and then one against New England. They win both of they end up winning both of those games with those extra 3 points. The other thing is, you did talk about Patrick Queen, but let's also talk about, they also did draft Peyton Wilson, who we know knows how to play linebacker, injured, but he gets to sit behind Patrick Queen and watch and learn and get inserted slowly and get brought up to speed. The other thing is, the defense is, they fixed the back end of that defense, which I think was very key, because in moving out from what we hear, is a locker room cancer in Deontay Johnson. They brought back Dante Jackson, who is a very solid cornerback. So now, if you believe in Joey Porter on one side, you have Dante Jackson on the left side. That allows Minkah Fitzpatrick to stop having to sometimes play in the slot, because unfortunately Patrick Peterson, his time has come where he's more than likely going to retire. But now Minkah Fitzpatrick can really truly sit back there and be a true free safety and be a ball hawking free safety that improves the front end, because we know with a guy like that in the backfield, that's going to buy those pass rushers a little bit more time to get to that quarterback. So I agree with you there with the defense. I think the defense will be even better. The other part is, and I think this is the part that we really talk about, or that I really hear about in terms of the coaching and the fit. The fit for Russ with Mike Tomlin gives him something similar to what he had when he was in Seattle with a guy like Pete Carroll, who's a player's coach, who knows how to handle characters. So, in the things that we've heard about Russ and with Denver, I've openly said last year that Russ is not a leader. It's really been the coaching and the other people. Well, he's coming into a similar situation. It's not the Legion of Boom, but you have your TJ Watt and you have these others there. But now you have Mike Tomlin that's in place there that can be the buffer between anything that happens with those with his teammates. He can be the buffer that knows how to pull everybody together, that knows how to put out any fire. And I think that's going to make Russ more comfortable. And those are the small things that don't show up in the stat sheet or that a lot of people don't talk about on why I believe in Russ. And I'm not saying that, but this is going to be Russ whenever he about 5 years ago when he led the league in touchdowns. No, I'm thinking about Russ being a very, very, very good game manager. And on those critical third downs that a guy like Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph can turn over, this is a guy that can probably at some point use his legs strategically and use his arm and his veteran savvy as a quarterback that's been in the league a while, make those plays that those other guys and even the guy behind him in Justin Fields would not be able to make because he's had the experience. Those are the things that I'm thinking on why I'm such a big believer in Pittsburgh this year.
Yeah, and it's understandable, Alex. Like you said, the roster is good. The coaching staff is good. There's going to be a lot around this quarterback position. But let's jump into the quarterback position because it's not just Russ. They brought in Justin Fields. And this is going to be, I think, the most high-profile quarterback battle at training camp this offseason in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. The Steelers made these two really low-risk moves this offseason to bring these guys in. Now, Wilson's going to be turning 36 during the season. And like I mentioned, he hasn't looked anything like the player we saw 4 or 5 years ago, to your point. But does he have to be? And that's a good, valid point, too, with this team and with this coaching staff and the stability. Maybe he doesn't need to be that guy. But this is really, I think, Alex, his last shot to really solidify himself as a starter in this league. I think this is it for him. If this doesn't work, he's going to be holding the clipboard here very soon. And it might even be this season because Justin Fields, as we know, 11th overall pick in 2021. He just didn't develop enough in his 3 years in Chicago. GM Ryan Poles decided to reset the position and took Caleb Williams first overall last April. Fields, look, he did improve. If you look at each one of his NFL seasons, and he was coming off of his best year in 2023, but he never looked like a guy worthy of that 11th overall draft pick. I think ideally, the Steelers would really like Justin Fields to stick as the starter. And I think he could be the guy that isn't just the quarterback of the present, but I think they would really like to see him become the guy of the present and the future, and maybe have a young guy they can build around so they don't have to use a bridge quarterback like Russell Wilson. Either one of these options, though, I think is clearly an upgrade over what they had last season. So I understand the optimism. I'm just pumping the brakes a bit because I'm not sure I buy into either one of these guys.
So I'll say this to your point. Justin Fields, the fifth-year option was not picked up. So he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. So realizing that, this makes this season even more interesting for the Pittsburgh Steelers because, like you said, you want Justin Fields to win the job because you don't want to start Justin Fields and then have to bench him. You really want to, if it were to happen in such a way, you will want to be in a position that you perhaps bench Russ and bring in Justin Fields because you don't want to kill his confidence. So I think they're they're teetering on a very, very thin line now that I realize that he's going to be an undrafted free agent at the end of the year. So they need to see it. But at the same time, if Russ goes in there and shows out, they're going to have a hard time benching him, especially those players when they're going to be feeling they're, moving and trending towards something than to sit him. But I will say this, that first half of that schedule is easy. That back half, when they have to face Cincinnati twice, Baltimore twice, Cleveland twice, that's the brutal part of that schedule that's really going to determine what this team will be for the 2024 season.